welcome to Monday Musing episode 30. How about that? I'm chuckling because we've just had a delivery arrive, which I've been waiting kind of pretty much all day for, and the dog just went ballistic and just gone quiet just on time. So we'll see how we're doing. I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay. Let's just have a check who's on the stream tonight. So we have Big Rich, Al Kirkham, Derpimus Maximus, Liam. Hey Liam, how you doing? Patrick's in there, Coleman, Reaper28, oosh, my favourite, is here, as he states. I can't believe I just did that. What else have we got? Big Rich, I think I've covered. Jim Wilson, Wes Eddie, DJ the Lucky One, and a whole bunch of people. Frost and Fist is in there, Dunny Woods is in there, Sam Stocks is in there. Yo, Sam. And who else have we got? Crikey. A whole bunch of you. Red Cuffs, Dave Dogs. I've subscribed. Wait, I am subscribed to so many I don't know who I'm watching anymore. You're watching Phil on Wargamer Online and my regular shot Monday Musing, but thanks for coming on. Anyway, it's good to see you. Cheers, man. I was watching an English bloke painting braidheads the other day on this channel. Yep, I'm still English, but Northern. Sam is the other member of WGO, and he's working on his braidheads army. We are both preparing an army for the doubles tournament that's coming up anytime soon, and I'm working on Fire Slayers. So there you go. But that's not the main theme of tonight's Monday Musing. Tonight I am going to be talking about my airbrushing hobby essentials, and forgive me because I'm not sure it happened on my show, but somebody out there in the community said I'd love to know about your extra gizmos and gadgets for airbrushing. And yes, Dave's saying, yeah, you were chatting the other day and you were giving me advice. Oh, brilliant. So I think I must have been on the chat. I think I was on Sam's live show, wasn't I? So there you go. Good to see you again. Mark Patter is joining us. Good evening. Hope to see you on Wednesday, sir. We've got a bat rep to film. And stripping minis. We would have been talking about isopropanol and or methylated spirits inside a sonic cleaner then. That's what we were talking about. So I hope you've had luck with that. Keep an eye on the temperature. That's the main thing. And if it gets too hot, or before you even kick the thing up, use it as a pre-soak, and you'll be smiling and happy. I tend to pre-soak in a separate tub, so most of the gunk is just brushed off with a toothbrush first before I put it in the sonic cleaner, because I tried to keep my sonic cleaner relatively clean, because I'm also dropping paint airbrush parts in there and stuff like that. Henrik says, this video came up for a perfect time. I was just about to order my first compressor and airbrush today, but first I need to take a quick shower. Got a lot of snow that needed shoveling here in Sweden. Oh man, I miss Sweden. I used to travel out to Sweden at least once a month, 15 years ago now, when I was a young man, and spent most of my time in sort of Gothenburg and Stockholm. So most of my time there, I used to head north a few times as well. So amazing place, absolutely love it. So I'm slightly jealous, even though you've had to shovel a whole bunch of snow and got yourself into a bit of state that requires a shower. I've done a previous video on the basics of airbrushing, so I'll talk about the basics kit and stuff. This is really more, like I say, as a request. It's a look through the kind of bits and bobs I keep on my desk for when I'm airbrushing that really helps out. There you go. Coleman, our resident multilingual person, is saying hello. And in Swedish, one can only assume. I remember. Oh no, that's Dutch. No, I can't even go there. So carry on, Coleman. You keep up the Swedish for now. That's great. Right, okay, there's a few things I want to look at. Let's have a look at the Hobby Desk Essentials, because that's the title of the show, so let's get those done pretty much in the first 10-15 minutes, I think, is probably where I'm going to go with this. And then I want to spend the last half of the show talking a little bit about what's going on in the community, talking a little bit about what's going on with the live battle reports we've been doing, and what's the next stage for us on that. We recorded another battle report over at the weekend We're about 2/3 of the way through that, and had stopped two things. My back was terrible this weekend, and the second was I simply ran out of time. But we are going to be shooting another back report on Wednesday, which is going to go more or less immediately into premium. Certainly by Friday it will be going into premium on the website. And then next Wednesday we'll be doing another live back report. So I want to talk a little bit about that and what we're trying to do and why we're trying to improve and increase the back report output. That's an impossible sentence at the best of time. Never mind about giving it the end of the day. I have to say my back is pretty bad at the moment, which means I am back on my back tablets at least for a day. Today was pretty awful at the office, so I've tried to do as much as I can. Liam has just said, "Let the chaos begin." You know what? I've been listening to Age of Sigmar. I've got distracted already. I've been listening to Age of Sigmar audiobooks, and all I want to do now is buy and paint Gore-Tide. I'm so into the Gore-Tide. I'm loving it. I'm loving it now. I've read the audiobooks, listened to the audiobooks, and have more personality about the army. Now, Sam's like a million miles ahead of me. He's been listening to a whole bunch of books and getting really into the sort of the fluff and the storylines of Age of Sigmar. So he's probably 100 books ahead of me, but he's absolutely right. He was talking about how it adds dimension to it. I've always been a big fan of reading the books, but really getting into and I should mention also the audio books of the Heresy. But I've never really listened to any of or read any of the stuff that's more recent, if you like. Is that right to say? So it's been good. It's been really good, and I've kind of seen the Gore chosen as just something that's kind of a bit faceless and murderous, and now I've started to really get into the characters. I love the idea that, and I know it doesn't change the game a huge amount, but the idea that some of them have simply grown up in a world where they've known no difference. I mean, you've got no choice. That's what you do. You're a kid, and you do a bit of murder, and you eat some bodies, and off you go. You're a Gore chosen. So what can you do? What can you do? I did a paper round when I was a kid, so you got to do what you got to do. Liam says the core models are some of the best in my opinion. Thank you very much for that. Listen, we'll catch up on the chat a little bit. I'm going to jump over to my desk, and I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking through my airbrushing hobby essentials, because I've promised that, and after that we can relax and go through the chat and catch up with everybody. So right, let's hope this thing works, because there you go. Is that working? That really doesn't look like it's working, and that's because in the middle of the setup I moved my lamp in front of it. Okay, first things first then. Can I get on the screen? I can get on the screen, and I can put my hands here. How about that? That looks about right. First things first. Pretty much the most important 3 liquids in my hobby essentials list is this, and excuse the WGO label. I just couldn't resist it. That's what I do. I'm always doing all sorts of nonsense like that. Water is there to essentially really wash out the brush, get rid of most of the paint out of the brush as fast as possible. I rarely use it for thinning. That's another story. We'll come back to that later. But essentially water is for blasting out. Why do I like these bottles? Well, these bottles are actually used airbrush cleaners, and I really like these bottles because you can seal them. But it's the squirty nozzle that is what it's all about. So if I'm cleaning a brush out, I will put the brush over a cup. I'm going to close this up so I don't coat my desk. I'll put the nozzle into it, and I will jet out all the pigment from the cup. And that's why even after months and months and years of use, that's what the inside of my cups looks like. So I've always made sure I just keep them absolutely clean. And blasting the pigment out that way, and then following it with a few drops of cleaner in between pigments, in between colours, is really important to me. The isopropanol is only there if I've made a catastrophic mistake in terms of I've allowed some paint to dry, I've left it too long in the brush or something like that. So you can actually tell just by looking at this. Okay, the water gets topped up. The cleaner's almost empty. The water gets topped up every session, and the isopropanol, as you can see, is I've used a few drops. and that thing will last me months before I even have to change it over. We'll talk a little bit about isopropanol, because Ralph, who's on the chat, I'm pretty certain Ralph is on the chat, put me onto something that never occurred to me about isopropanol, and it's not drinking it. But he put me onto something about isopropanol, which we'll talk a little bit about later. It's made a massive impact on my painting, the hand painting with brushes. Okay, the next hobby essential, without a doubt for me, is this little beauty. So this is the 3-in-1 cleaning pot. Guess what? I rarely use it for cleaning. Most of the time, I've got a little stand up on. Whoa! I've got a little stand up on the top of my my extractor fan, which I'll show a picture of shortly anyway, so you get to see what the setup's like. But what I've got is my compressor hose comes underneath my desk, up and over my desk, into my brush, and then I am using that to merely rest my brushes in. And you will notice I've made wee tiny modifications to all of this. They don't come with this little hollow here. I file those hollows out just using a hand file. Just takes a bit of time, and hack it with a pen knife. Pen knife? Who's used that word in a long time? Hack it with a scalpel. Be careful, cut away from you, all those kind of things. Why do I do that? Well, basically it's just so when I put the brush in, you'll see the angle, it sits a bit lower, sits a bit nicer, and it's a bit more secure as well. So yeah, I do use that if I'm blasting cleaner through the brush. That's the main thing, and I will put it into there, and obviously all of the liquid you see in the bottom of there, if you can see any liquid in there, you can do. All of that liquid is essentially cleaner. There's more or less no water in there, because like I say, I'll use an open cup for water. But for cleaner, to save my lungs, even though I've got an extractor fan going, this is brilliant. You blast the cleaner into there, and you're good to go again. So probably the second most important thing on my desk after my 3 pots of juice. What else? Right, well, there's a few things going off. Q-tips, cotton buds, ear buds. You can't call them earbuds because you can't put them in your ear. Absolutely do not put cotton buds in your ears unless you are under adult supervision. No, actually, you know what? You can't put them in your ear anyway. Just never do it. But what you can do is use them, and this is the thing, if I've got a stubborn bit of paint, I will drop a bit of cleaner in the bottom of there, and then I will use this to just scrub the inside of the cup, as you can see from that. So again, that's why, like I say, this brush is not a new brush by any means, but look how super clean the inside of the cup is, and that's because I'll scrub it all about. And this is the important bit. I'm sure I've done a video, by the way, on cleaning your airbrush, and I'm pretty certain that's on the YouTube channel and not on the premium section of the website. But so check out Phil's tip on cleaning your airbrush. I'm sure there's a quick tip anyway, and you'll see that whole process in you know, from start to finish. The most important thing is when you've scrubbed out dry paint from the inside of the cup, you again get the water, you know what, I'm just going to leave the brush down here because I'm going to be using it to demonstrate. You get the water, you get the nozzle, you put it on its side over the top of a cup. I don't have a cup, I do have a whiskey glass, but you know, it didn't have whiskey in, by the way, it was tonic water. And I put it over the top, and then you blast. You know what, I can actually demonstrate it into my beloved whiskey glass, so I will do that basically. And what that does is it knocks out all the dried flakes of paint into said whiskey glass, or mug will be absolutely fine. And what it means is later on when I'm using the brush, none of those little dried flecks of paint are going to work their way into the nozzle. And that's the intriguing thing. If I am doing an airbrush session, the brush will only get a complete clean at the end of a session, and that session might be 3 or 4 days. If I'm running the brush for 3 or 4 days, rinse with water, rinse with cleaner, and then you know, a quick scrub out with a cotton bud, Q-tip, and then I'm sure they call them Q-tip in the US, apologies if not, and then they're good to go. You can store them with just a couple of drops of cleaner in the bottom. I'm gonna have to I'll say this now, I've got a little bit of a runny nose because I've got a little bit of a cold, so I'm not gonna blow, just gonna wipe, but you know, keep it more pleasant for all of us. Next hobby essential then is this little thing, and And this is the important bit. I will use this for two things, but I will always, and of course I didn't put any snippers first and foremost. I'll snip the very end of the cocktail stick off. Don't have any snippers around. The reason I do that is I don't want a splinter of wood in my airbrush. So I'll snip the end off so it's got a nice blunt end, and I will simply use that to stir the paint in the bottom of my brush. And so I have a pot of those around. And they do back up as a couple of things. I never use them for clearing my nozzle out, by the way. That's not the job. That's not what they're for. It's literally for stirring the paint in the pot. Why do I do that? Sometimes I'm using incredibly sort of diluted pigments. So if I'm doing some fine work, if I'm aiming to do hairline, for instance, with the fire slayers, I want to attempt a small sort of orange object source lighting glow around the runes. Now, if you've seen these guys, you know, their runes are, I will try and attempt this, their runes are, let's see if we can get that really close. There you go, their runes are tiny. Now, I want to do a glow around that. To do that, the paint's going to need to be really, really thin. The pressure's going to need to be really, really low. What tends to happen is if you thin your paint that much, your pigment will settle really quick. So if I'm painting for a while, I'll just have a little blunted cocktail stick and I will give it a stir around just to keep the pigment suspended in whatever I'm using as a carrier, be it drying retarder or X20 from Tamiya, whatever I'm using to thin the paint as a carrier. It's just to keep the pigment in. Right, what else is on my hobby desk then? Essentials. I'm trying to think of essentials because I think there's two sides of airbrushing. There's the stuff you can get away with, and then there's the stuff that you can spend a boatload of money on. So for instance, I've got a sonic cleaner. You can get them relatively cheap from eBay and places like that. You know, so you get the China imports. They're relatively cheap. It's still, to a degree, an extravagance. It's wonderful, though, because if the brush gets clogged up, I strip it down, drop all the bits in the sonic cleaner, and boom, I'm off. But I'm not going to class the sonic cleaner as an essential. I consider it essential because I own one now. Before I had a sonic cleaner, I didn't consider it essential. I'm sure I had two. You know what? I just told you can save money on the sonic cleaners. Don't, whatever you do, go super cheap with it. Because I did that, and literally my last sonic cleaner set on fire. So, you know, be careful how much you spend. I did spend a little bit more on this one. Right. Okay then. Next thing then. My cunningly coined the coffee caps. They're not that at all. They are something I 3D printed, and what they do is they provide me with a way of holding the model that I'm airbrushing. For those of you who've seen any of my tutorials and anything like that, I'll take a model, I will do bases separately. I stick their feet on a little bit of sprue. Into that little bit of sprue, I will stick a cocktail stick, and that cocktail stick then goes into one of these little doohickeys, and it gives me a holder. Now, these doohickeys didn't exist until about a week ago, and prior to that, for anybody who's seen, excuse me a second, anybody who's seen Sam's little tip, this is what these doohickeys look like. They were a bit of cork. I could stab my model into them. There you go. Same job, and just as good. Really useful to hold them. A little bit bigger. Why is there a base on the bottom? Why do my little doohickeys? I think I called these thimbles. Thimbles, as in PHIMBL. So I wanted to get fill in there. So, why is that little lip on the bottom? Well, I'm a big fan of these, and who isn't, to be honest, a big fan of these holders? Whoa. There goes my little dude. He properly shut off. So yes, they're done like that, so they will hold. There you go. That's what that's about. For airbrushing, it's really useful. You can brace your hand against yourself. For painting, it's really useful. You can brace your hand against yourself. So there you go. So those, much cheaper option. Well, I say much cheaper option, much more accessible option. I am going to stick the 3D object up for these on the website, so people can download the object and print their own. It's designed for cocktail sticks, but I've also designed one for pins as well, so if you use pins or whatever. you'll notice there's a little magnet in the bottom, and that's how I can do that. So my spray sticks are actually just old metal bars now. So if I'm going to spray a bunch of models, I can do that, and I can spray and do primer and those kind of things, and that is a massive benefit over those doohickeys. And it saves you having the pin bars and boxes and all those kind of things. Is it an airbrushing essential? Leaving the model off the base, I think, is really important, because it enables you to do shading. Most people kind of work from shadow up to highlighting with airbrush. If you really want to take your airbrushing to the next level, you want to leave yourself room to actually darken areas back down again. If they're on the base, chances are you cannot get the airbrush accessible to what you're trying to do. Worst comes to the worst with me, I can hold the model there, and I can do these under areas underneath here and work away, and I'm perfectly happy to get access to those things, and then I can pop them back on my doohickey. So I'd say they're pretty essential, and the reality is the cheap version is a bunch of old bases and corks from your wonderfully donating wife. In my case, that's Sarah, who gets through at least 14 bottles of champagne a day, and in Sam's case it's Rachel, and I think Rachel tends to pretty much, I said champagne, it's actually Prosecco. Same with Rachel, she'll have between 10 and 15 bottles of Prosecco a day, so it's easy for Sam to build up on the corks. What else is on my essentials? Well, I tell you what, there's something here really, really important to me. These are bought off of eBay. I bought 300 of them. I'm still working my way through the list, and that is for me to decant and make my own mixtures, my own paints and my own consistencies into the pot. So you will see anything from Citadel Air Carrack Stone, which was done as an airbrush paint. You will see the Citadel Air Relic to Gold. That's just actually it's not straight out the can, so again I've done some modifications to the mixture and those kind of things. I will also decant paint, so things like the Minotaur Ghost Tints, which are by far the best sort of gel coats out there. They're amazing. But also decanting things like the Forge World airbrush. It takes time. A lot of people consider it a waste of time, but you know what? When you're really having a massive airbrush session and you've got one of these dropper bottles, and you can, what did I do with my airbrush? Put it back up there. You can quickly just drop the paint, and this is the thing as well. When I'm doing stuff, I will actually drop the paint right into the nozzle. Obviously I'll take the lid off first, but that stops that whole big splash of paint up around the side. That all helps clean it. So cleanliness is next to airbrushliness, if you ask me. So yeah, that's useful, but it's only useful insofar as I stick one of these in the bottom of it. Your paint is as only good as the balls that you can agitate the paint with. So I've got Green Stuff World. I'm a big fan of these. They've never failed on me. Yes, they're not the cheapest out there by any means. 6.35 millimeters. There's a ton of weight in every one of those, which means if you really need to stick that, get that paint mixing, you'll hear that. It gives me a little rattle can in every single pot. That's vital for getting a consistent paste mix. People use glass beads, people use plastic beads, people use all sorts of bits and bobs. Personally, I think the plastic and the glass and those kind of things just don't have the weight of these 6.5mm steel balls, which really enables them to kind of, let's take this look. You kind of, it straight away, it drops out. Look how separated the pigment is there. It drops out of that, and straight away you're, properly agitating your paint. So for me, those plus those, pretty important part of my painting routine. Yes, it takes time to decant all your paint. What I tend to do is, at the start of any painting session, I might spend, not every painting session, but say I'm using colours I haven't used before, I'll spend half an hour at the start of it, and in half an hour you can do, say, 10 paints. You can decant 10 paints out. Sam's done a video on decanting paints, because what you do is you kind of pour the thick part of the paint, then you add a bit of thinner and swish that around the original pot, then you pour that in again, and you keep diluting it until you've pretty much got most of the paint out of the original pot. If there's any to waste, seriously, you make up for that on what you'd normally just blurt on a palette. So I tend not to worry about it. Okay, well, this is kind of related to the first two. Every now and then, I'm a little bit of an idiot. I leave the lid off my paint pots, which means they can get a bit messy. Well, you know what? That's not too bad. Can I just say, if you do this, just get into the habit of a quick wipe down before you put your lid back on. You will get a much better seal every time. So if you notice that there was hardly any mess on there. But every now and then, I'm clumsy numpty, and I forget to take the lid off, and that blocks up. And that just enables me to just stick a needle through. As you can see, it's coated in different colours. Every now and then, I treat it to a clean. But it was some kind of sculpting tool, but really it's my painty pokey tool. I don't think I use it for any sculpting at all. There you go. Right, what else is there? There's a couple more bits we'll cover. This tissue, lots of it, tons of it, but get the right kind of tissue. Do you see this? I use this for wiping my nose on live streams, and that's it. You know, wiping up mess and those kind of things, because it's just cheap tissue and it's really fibrous. You can see, you probably see the edge there as it tears. It's really fibrous. This, not so. It's a lot tougher, a lot more absorbent. It's actually not my favoured one. There is a blue tissue you get from mechanic shops, which is stunning because it's just like a proper cloth, and that's amazing. But this is not bad alternative, and it's just got a bit more going to it than the cheap tissue. And it's a bit like kitchen towel plus this, probably the best way of describing it. And again, I will use that. I will have a sheet of that. I'll use it for anything from mopping up the mess when I'm clumsy enough to spill. I'll use it for anything after doing a rinse out in the stuff, just to get that in there, give it a good scrub out, take out the mess, put the cap back on, keep it nice and dust free, back into my storage. So tissue, lots of it. You're always going to use tons of it. We're pretty much down to the last few things, folks. So I think I'm doing okay for time. Yeah, I'm doing okay for time. Mixing your paint. I've mentioned the steel balls. I actually have a couple of things. Hold on a minute, folks. Here we go. Right. So I have one of these. Is this going to work? I hope so. Yep, that's going to work. So I have a nail lacquer shaker. Because all of these have got a little steel ball in, I pop it on there. I'm not going to fire this up because it makes an incredible noise and it doesn't always switch off because it's super cheap. And plus, I've just remembered it's a photo you're looking at and not a video. You put it into that little cradle, it shakes it, you do it for 60 seconds, something like that, and your paint is like it was out the factory. It's beautiful and smooth and well done. You know, I think that's pretty useful as well. Super cheap. I know there are other paint shakers out there in the world. I know, Ralph, you've got a really snazzy one. Mine was 20 quid off of eBay, and I think I managed to get it down to about £17 if I bought two of them. So I treated Sam to one as well. Let's just have a quick look at my desk. This is actually set up for painting at the moment, but just to give you an idea, yes, I am a little bit insane. So I've put some LED lights onto my extractor just so I've got light on the reverse of stuff. I think, you know, backlighting stuff is really handy to stop shadows and those kind of things. So just to give you an idea of what the setup's like, but like I say, I'm actually on the stage with my fire slayers now as all the airbrushing's done. So my extractor fan just becomes an extension of my desk. You'll probably notice if you've ever bought one of these, there's an extra piece that sticks out here and there's an extra piece that goes up here and across there. I took that off. I don't think it did anything. It made access to the extractor more difficult. Right now I paint a little bit closer and stuff gets drawn out and it works really well and it doesn't occupy all of my desk. So that's why I stripped all of that off. Okay, I mentioned that some things I consider as essential and some things are possibly bordering on luxury. This is a luxury. I bought one of these separate. You know what? Blast! I can't remember the name. It's a pressure adjustment widget, and I'll be blowed if I can remember the name. It also has a water filter. I've got basically one of these attached to my. I've got one of these attached to my compressor, and I set the pressure output of my compressor to 30 psi. The reason I do that, I never use above 30 psi. It's just not needed. You know, and the airbrushing. You know, my favorite, super beloved. Here we go, Ralph. I'm gonna go for it. Steinerez. My favorite primer of all time. That might go out at 30, something like that, on a 0.5 needle. But the reason I've got this up there is this is wonderfully accessible. It's right next to my extractor fan. I'm airbrushing away. Ignore the little grip with my 3D printed brush holder at the side of my pad. I'm airbrushing away, and I can just do fine pressure adjustments right on my desk. Like I say, I don't consider this as an essential. It's possibly a little bit of an extravagance, but extravagance, whatever, it's still one of my favorites. The big thing is this gauge was swapped over. This was super cheap. It was off eBay, the actual pressure filter thing. But this gauge, I paid a little bit extra for, and it goes between 0 and 30 psi. So my pressure down on my main compressor is set to 30 psi. That goes from 0 to 30 psi. So the maximum I can ever send out of this thing is 30. But doing those fine adjustments between 8 and 10 psi, 8 and 12 psi, those fine adjustments, it's right on my desk. I just reach with my right hand, do a little tweak, get my working pressure down on the brush, and off I go. And the beauty is, my compressor's a few feet away from me now because I've got a nice 10-foot hose running between the two. I've got 2 moisture traps on there, so I don't need to have anything near the brush trapping moisture. I never get a moisture splatter through the brush, no matter what conditions I'm in, whether I'm airbrushing in the middle of winter or whatever. By the time you've got those 2 moisture traps and the length of the pipe, and then the pipe going from the tube going from this second filter, and as you notice, it's not actually going across my desk, it's going out and round and underneath my desk, so it doesn't trail across my desk and tip paints over and those kind of things. So there you go. That's some stuff that is offline at the moment. Then back to this. One last thing, and I do believe I've got Patrick. I've got Patrick to thank for this one, which is this amazing stuff. Don't do what I did. Don't assume that the tin is about that big, and order yourself 3 of them. Turns out the tin is not that big. By the way, that came free with something. It's hair gel, possibly. I ordered 3 of these things. This is amazing. It's absolutely wonderful. All it is a kid's toy. But, you know, if you've got any of this, if you remember it, it was like a weird gel that had some strange Newtonian properties, which meant if you stretched it, it stretched. And if you pulled it really fast, it snapped. So if your kids have got any of that, or if you've got any of that, you've probably got masking putty. I love this stuff. It's so much better than blue tack. It can go down to really fine detail. You can get it down to absolutely pencil thin. It's not as sticky as blue tack. It behaves itself a lot more. It's just amazing stuff. So that is definitely a hobby essential if you want to take your airbrushing to the next level. Again, essential, don't know. I don't know whether it's an essential. Depends what you're wanting to do with your airbrush. If it's about base coating, getting to first coats. For instance, I've not touched this with the fires layers. I might use it when I go back and do some funky highlights on the fires layers. So there you go. I said I would give a guided tour of what's on my desk for airbrushing. I think that pretty much covers everything that I have on my desk. There's one thing I didn't mention. I've got this. It's just one of those keyboard wrist pad things. Really, really useful. Really useful if you're doing work, just to kind of, I get a lot of strain sort of resting on the desk. You can just pop your hand on there, you pop your elbow on there if you're bracing something higher up. It's just really comfortable. They're only a few quid off of the internet. Makes a big difference to me anyway. I'm going to have to clean my glasses. So I'm going to catch up on the chat, and then we will see what else is going on. Because, wow, I really did burn some time on that. I thought that would be like a 10-minute segment. I'm using my kitchen towel. There you go. So, right, where are we at? I'm going to scroll back up the chat, but whether I can possibly catch up with all of it, I don't know. I'm going to look out for the Wargamer Online, and that will help things, I think. Few made it. Oh, Daryl made it. Got stuck in work for half an hour extra, then had to walk home. Not a happy chappy. Daryl, well, thank you for joining me. I think I've pretty much... Yes, that's right back to where the chat was. So, Dave, walk home. Coleman, Fell Hate saying hi, or hey, Fell Hate, how you doing? Let's just keep looking out for the Wargamer Onlines then. And Liam says core models are the best, so definitely caught up. Fell Hate, you should get a sit and stand desk for your bag. Yes, I've made a massive difference. I don't know whether this is going to show on the camera. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, just at the risk of showing you what a mess my desk is at the moment. I made this thing this week. And I put up on the Facebook page. It was made from an offcut from a flying base I made, and everybody was like, "What do you put on a flying base that big?" You put a Tau Manta on a flying base that big is what you put on a flying base that big. Yes, just one rod down the center with an 8-inch. I think it was a 10-inch disc underneath. And actually hiding the bottom half of it was the top half of the... I can't remember the name of it. It's the square tower that you get for Warhammer 40k. I can't remember the name of the Bastion. So it was a shortened Bastion, and this came out the top of the Bastion and up to the Tau Manta. It looked really, really cool. They had like defenders shooting up from the top of the Bastion, shooting at the Manta. I think that was the idea. I didn't do all the work. I did the airbrush work and all the rest. So I had this bit. I've got some cork. I've got some teak that, bless him, my father-in-law, when he passed away recently, my wife said, you know, there's only one person who gets his hobby stuff really, and that had to be me, because we'd kind of been hobby buddies throughout the years. He hadn't done Warhammer 40k, he did things like Napoleonics and stuff like that. So I popped round to his house with my wife, and we grabbed all of his hobby stuff, and in there was a whole bunch of thinly sliced teak for doing custom bases and those kind of things. And it's not really the kind of thing I do, so there you are. I'm honouring my father-in-law with a little bit of teak on there. Why am I talking about this? I'm hoping you can see what's going to do. I'm combining that and I'm combining that. I get my model, I get my brush, and this is my trusty medium layer brush, which is pretty much just does everything. I can rest the model on top of this, and I can paint like that, and I can rest both of my hands like that, or I can rest like that, or if I want it a little bit lower down, I can kind of change the position like that. And it just gives me something. By the time I've braced my elbows onto the pad, so my elbows are going onto the pad and my hands are going onto the top of this raised pedestal, that's enabling me to paint sat upright. I mean, that's my position, rather than what I would have been doing in the past. I'd have been bent right over the table trying to paint. It's made a massive difference to me. I owe Sam a thank you, gratitude for that, because it was him that pointed out, seriously dude, that desk is no good for your back. And I decided to try and come up with a solution for it. So I don't think I need the sit and stand desk, although I do like sit and stand desks. I like the principle of them. We've got some at the office I work at actually, and I love the idea. What else have we got? We've got Acharia joining us. Hey man, looking forward to seeing you soon. Not long now. Big Rich, hey Phil, you think I can get an airbrush set between $100 and $200 and the best? Absolutely. You could, for instance, the Badger Patriot 105 or something like that. If I can stick that up there, that's a great all-rounder brush. If you want to up a notch a little bit, then there's things like the Velocity, which gives you a couple of options. But you will pick those up for about $120, something like that, and that's leaving you $80 to pick up a cheap compressor with a tank easily for that price. But I am talking the $200 mark. For the $100 mark, you'll be pushing it. You can get one of those. I talk about it on a video. There's all sorts of sets online where you get the compressor, a tanked compressor, and 2 separate airbrushes. They'll be great for base coating and stuff like that, and certainly get you up and running. And you can do that for about $18, $19. Yeah, it's interesting. On that review I did, somebody commented saying, because I mentioned don't go for a compressor without the tank, because the tank is the thing that solves the pulsing. And somebody commented on the video, and I'm not disagreeing with them. It's they commented the tank doesn't really make a difference on the pulsing, and it's it's unnecessary. You could do without it. A friend of mine was starting up airbrushing recently and saved all of 20 quid and went without the tank, and we hit the brush and straight away it was pulsing. So yeah, I don't get a tank, whatever you're doing at that. If you want to know more, there is a video. It is a previous Monday Musing, and I think it was titled "How to Get Started on Airbrushing," or "How do you get started on airbrushing," or something like that. Just check back on the Monday Musings, you'll find it. Right. Right. Amit, lots of people shouting. Dave says, Dave, can you put at Wargamer online so I can spot your questions? It helps, mate. Cheers. Thank you. It's not compulsory. It's just if I miss it, it's because I haven't got the big... When you get the at Wargamer online, all one word, it's like a big red box, and it really helps us spot the questions. So... Dave says, you got the difference between isopropanol and methylated spirits for cleaning. What's the difference? Well, they're both high-grade alcohols, basically. Isopropanol is 99.7 alcohol. I think methylated spirits is bordering on there. It's got a bunch of stuff added into it. Isopropanol smells a hell of a lot nicer than meths, basically. They both do the same job. They both do pretty much exactly the same job. Meths is easier to get hold of because you will pick it up as a paint stripper, if you like, from DIY shops and stuff like that. Isopropanol is generally online ordering now. I buy my isopropanol in 5-litre tubs, and in the year since I've started, I'm still on my 5-litre tub of isopropanol, which I bought off of eBay. So yeah, it takes a while to get through it unless you're using it to bathe in, which is no good for your skin, by the way, so do be careful. Henrik says, we've been covered in snow since November. I can't remember a winter with this much snow, and there's no end in sight. I do remember those Swedish winters. Like I say, I used to travel out there every couple of years, every couple of months. No, you know what? Once a month for about a 10-year period. And, geez, those winters were long out there. Had a lot of fun, though. Had a lot of fun. Nice WGO label, says Amit. Thank you very much, mate. It's not essential that you do labels. It's the kind of thing I do when I'm bored. I just put in one ear after my shower. You can absolutely do it. Norska confirmed. I've just, yeah, right, okay then. Bit of internal chat going off there. Something about warp magic. Oh, gotta go put my daughter in bed. If it pauses, it pauses you, and right now, yes, if you pause the chat, you will have gone ages ago. This was like 20 minutes ago. You're probably already back by now. But yes, you can pause me, mate. Don't worry about it. And it does pause me in real life as well, which would be pretty shocking. Reaper says, a little off topic, but could you do a quick show of what brushes you use for detail and what varnish you use? Don't worry if you can't. Yeah, sure, I've got time for that. I'm looking at how far down I'm on the chat. Let's go back to that desk cam. I've promised Patrick I'll show something before the end of the show. Patrick, I know you've got a cold, but hang in there, dude. I will get there. The vast majority of stuff I've been doing, let's see if I can actually zoom back in now. Okay, I knew that would work. Okay, look, the vast majority of the stuff I use, love them or hate them. The medium layer brush, if you get the right one, you are onto a winner. And maybe that's a good time to talk about something the beloved Patrick taught me about my brushes. You'll notice that's got a pretty decent point on it. And see if I can put it against my skin. It's got a super point. It's not a new brush. It's not great actually because I haven't cleaned it properly, but you know, I'll have to leak the brush to sort that out, and you can't do that. I also use the layer small brush as well, but the main thing is just don't pick them up. Don't go in the shop. Don't do that either. Don't jam your bristles against the protector. You will see all sorts on my desk. There's army painters on there for dry brushing. I've got a few more Citadel brushes on there. I have got a couple of the Games and Gears brushes. If I was going to say though, where do I start? To be honest, you know, I've always been pretty happy with those. I think Broken Toad do beautiful brushes, but Sam knows more about that. Again, I go with the basis that usually when I need a brush, I don't get a lot of notice. I will I will make a mess of a brush, I will ruin it, and I'll go blast and head down to my local GW and pick a brush up. And what I know is out of the 20 odd brushes that are on the rack, spend a bit of time looking through them. Just make sure you're buying the right one, you know, making sure you buy the one that the bristles look straight, they look well packed, you know, out of here, that they're not sort of spraying out and those kind of things. And I think you're onto a winner there. But little chat about Ralph's wonderful trick. Can I get back to this? Yes, I can get back to this. Can I get? Yes, I can. There you go. So you will notice 3 little tubs in there. One says non-metallics, the other one says metallics, believe it or not, and the other one says isopropyl, which is weird because it's actually isopropanol. So don't buy isopropyl. That's something different. But the label maker and me got lazy. I used why have I got those pots? By the way, I've had those pots absolutely years, and I bought the tray in, and at one time when you bought the tray you got 2 pots with it as well, so that's how I've got those pots. I have bought a third one. I've gone off mugs. So many times I've stuck my paintbrush in my tea and my coffee, and I know mugs is a really cheap option, but I had 2 of them already. I treated myself to one more for a £5. And I 3D printed a little lid for this one, so let's just actually show you that working, if we can do that. And it will make sense shortly. It will make sense if I talk about what that is. So I've got a little lid like I 3D printed. It's not super airtight, but it's tight enough to stop it dissolving. And evaporating is a better word. So what's that about? Well, I've used isopropanol for that stubborn removal of paint for a long time. I have also used things like the brush cleaner, Master's brush cleaner, which is brilliant. It's a soap, essentially. It's absolutely brilliant. And I've even used this. It came free with an order, and you know what? I don't mind it for the end of a painting session to put a point back on the brush. It's essentially hair gel. So you can literally gel your brush back up and train the hairs back to a point, because that's what it's all about. The hairs can get trained, just like you can use a straightener on your beard. You can train the hairs on the brush to spray out and those kind of things. But the main things that makes the bristles spray out is paint drying inside, in between the bristles. And why it had never occurred to me to use isopropanol to clean the standard brush out, I have absolutely no idea. But Patrick mentioned it the other day, and I thought, you know what? Ralph mentioned it the other day, and I thought that's a brilliant idea. And I went through my collection of knackered brushes, and I gave them all a 15 to 20 second soak in isopropanol, wiped them on a bit of tissue. You wouldn't believe how much gunk comes out the brush. I did that 3 or 4 times until it was coming out clean, and then I quickly got it into fresh water because I didn't want the glue on the bristles to erode away. Quickly got it into fresh water for a bit of a soak, then into the Master's brush cleaner just to soften the bristles out, and then I treated them to the salon effect of a little bit of repair gel, which, like I say, just hair gel, dude. This smells like lovely, like I'm getting ready for a nightclub, which I haven't done in years. There you go. So yeah, I think that it's all about the point of the brush for me. And Sam will say this. It was Sam actually who was painted a million models with a medium layer brush. When I first met him, and of course I was buying all these super fine brushes for detail, and then you realise actually it's more about holding your hand steady and having a really good point on the brush. And after that, I've got some brushes that have like 2 bristles and things like that. They're okay, but they don't hold any paint. They dry really quickly because they're not holding much paint. If you can hold a decent body of paint in the brush and still have a decent point, you're onto a winner. And remember, thin your paints. So I hope that's at least showing you some stuff. I'm using pretty much vast majority of my stuff, standard GW stuff. I am a fan of these games and gears. They didn't last that long, but again, isopropanol has rescued my brushes. Super happy with that. So thank you very much, Ralph, for the tip. Right, okay, what's going off then? I've definitely covered that. Off topic a bit. So Reaper, I hope that answers your question. Bunch of chat between Coleman and stuff like that, probably contradicting me or something like that. And then Phil equals airbrush, Sam equals handbrush. Well, yes. Sam does know the hand brushes more. He's experimented with a lot more brushes than me, and as I've said, you will speak to him. He will talk about Winsor & Newton's Broken Toad, or he's just his broken brush at the moment. If you watch any of his tutorials, he's hacked one of his old Citadel paintbrushes in half, I think, or it could be a Winsor & Newton one anyway. But I honestly think Sam could paint with his fingers and still attain a better level of detail than me. Lee Parkin says, how much could you pick up an airbrush set for? I've never tried one before, but I don't want to spend lots of money on something I might not like. Well, as I mentioned, I've done a previous Monday Musing on that. I'm not sure what country you're in, so I'm going to go with pounds and dollars. $80-90 will get you an airbrush compressor and a basic brush. There's still a little bit more to be spent. You can pick them up for about £60 odd in the UK through Amazon. Go back and check that video out on the Monday Musing. I'll sort of talk through the options on that and show a few on screen. I do suggest, though, if you're going to do it, I kind of mentioned that, you know, there are cheaper and easier ways to get into airbrushing. You can use the aerosol cans, you can sit on an old tyre, you can do all sorts of stuff to get the air source, but the reality is, I think the compressor affords you two things: an endless supply of air, which means an endless supply of practice time, and airbrushing is practice, 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 and cleaning. And that's probably the last bit of advice I'll throw up on airbrushing on this, maybe, which is if you've got an hour to do some airbrushing, you've got 40 minutes to do some airbrushing, because at the very least you need 20 minutes for having a good clean of the brush at the end of it. But could you don't throw the dwarf? I did throw the dwarf. I'm sorry about that. Hey, can you highlight with airbrush? Yes, you can. You just who's saying that, by the way? That's Big Rich. Can you highlight with airbrush? Yeah, you absolutely can. You can't do edge highlighting to a degree. I mean, it depends if you're doing vehicles. You can kind of spray off the edge if you've got, you know, no backdrop behind, or if you can mask the backdrop. But yes, you can. You know, if we were to take these dwarves, it's difficult to. Let me see if I can get you a close shot, and I'll try and highlight what has and hasn't been done with airbrush. So let's see, how far in are we on this little fellow. Let's see how far the camera will go. Will it go any further? Okay, so the vast majority of the highlights you're seeing there are done by airbrush. So this light patch on his shoulder was airbrushing. What's going off on this bit of his thigh here was airbrushing. The back of his heel, definitely. You see these little highlights here on the back of his heel. That's just catching. That's just spraying down and catching it with a bit of airbrush. So it's not a great angle, sorry. So I'm spraying it and just catching the back. Also, I am spraying. You will see where the light. You can actually see where the overspray is hitting the base. So you can see how small the actual bit of light paint was. It was about, by the time it was hitting the base, about 3 millimeters across, which means by the time it was hitting his heel, the spray line was probably about 1 millimeter across. You'll notice, though, on this model that I picked up an extra couple of bits. I just did a quick test, really. It wasn't great, on muscle fiber. So this was done with a very translucent thing of just adding some muscle fiber streaks into the model. Again, this is an army that's army painted. And by the way, it's far from finished. It's essentially base coats on top of the work I've done for skin. So everything else is just flat base coats. It's the skin that's been taken to that level, if you like. So yeah, that's highlighting with an airbrush, and then doing a little bit of work extra on top with just the hand brush, if you like, but almost glazing those fibrous layers on. Amit's saying, don't forget to like and subscribe. Coleman says, someone's sleeping in the garage tonight. Oh, we'll come back to that. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Oh, a bunch of chat. Jet Set Jimbo, Wargamer Online, Kitchen Towel. Yeah, it pretty much is Kitchen Towel. Like I say, what I would prefer, though, is there is stuff you can get from sort of automotive garages and those kind of things, and it doesn't have the fibre. And I'm a stickler for not getting anything other than paint into the nozzles. I don't use any pokey sticks. Don't clean your nozzles with anything physical. It should all be liquids to clean your nozzles if you're getting it right. Regulator, says Derpimus Maximus. Nail lacquer for paint, says Dave. Why not? Ralph says, we have the same essentials, but my paint shaker is more, well, orange. Yes, it is orange, and 3 times the price as well. Probably, maybe a little bit more. Stein Res. Nile. Stein Res. Come on, Phil, you can say it. Stein Res. Thank you very much. The best primer out there. If you haven't got a tub of the grey, you've never lived. Get the grey. I love the rest, to be honest, but the black followed by the grey, you will see that on all my little dudes. You can see the grey there. That's why I'm working from grey. It's a lovely, incredible mid-grey, and it is ridiculously thin. Give it 12 hours to properly cure before you start painting on top, and it is the best primer out there. Ours go to 11, says Coleman. I'm not quite sure what that's about. Reaper says, this is going straight over my head. Well, I apologise, Reaper. I will try and move on from this subject. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of Wargamer Online at the bottom. I'm going to jump to, what have we got? Ralph Hummel. Acharya, what sort of PSI Ralph Hummel have a Sparmex? Right, I'm going to leave Ralph to that. Those guys can chat about PSI and all the rest. That's not what tonight's show was about. Dave says, look at what putty means in Spanish. Okay, we'll move on from that. I think we've got a Swedish. We've got some Swedish in the chat today. I work with somebody called Pippa, and that was always embarrassing to introduce at meetings to our Swedish fellows. Dave, Amit says, don't forget to sign up to freemium membership on Wargamer Online. You can check out the forum and all the rest. Yes, that's cool. Johnny Rockstar, yes. Still waiting on an opportunity to buy a Patriot 105, but life has been getting in the way. Badger did an incredible deal. They did the 56th birthday of Ken, and you could buy any Badger airbrush for 56 quid. It was an amazing deal. They're still struggling to fulfill the orders, but you know what? They're getting through them. I know some people haven't been happy about the weight, but you just bought an airbrush for 56 quid, possibly $56. I can't quite remember now. Either way, crazy price. Shame that you missed it, but there you go. Oh no, my son's PC blew up, so that's out the window now. Oh, Johnny, never mind, mate. Getting a Big Rich says, get a compressor with an extra tank. Yes, you don't need anything. It's like a 3-litre tank on the bottom of it. Again, check the video out. There's a link on Amazon there. It'll give you an idea, but it's an engine with a little tank below. I mean, I've got a bigger deal, but that's just, I only recently upgraded, and I upgraded to a silent compressor, and that was to help with tutorials and not to keep everybody awake. Big Rich says the reason it gets overheated, right? Well, there's 2 things the tank gives you. It gives you, like I say, it gets rid of the pulsing from the air. It gives the engine a rest because it pumps the tank up to pressure, and you can set the tank at like 60 psi, so that gives you quite a bit of airbrushing time before it fires back in. So, you know what? The tank is usually auto set. So you're pumping the tank full of air, and then the engine switches off. It gives you 2 things. It gives the engine a rest, but it also gives your ears a rest. Reaper says, sniffing the alcohol a lot. I'm certainly sniffing at the moment, but I think that's cold related. Amit's doing his bit to get everybody to join the community Facebook page and all the rest. Do so. That would be most nice. We love it when people support us in any way they can. Ralph almost says, keep it family friendly, please. I think that relates back to something I said earlier. Apologies for that. Reaper says, I have the Artificer layer, but I find it near useless at detail. It's annoying because the small does gets very well half the price. Yeah, well, I mean, that's the point. I've got an Artificer brush. It's still in the tub. I know Sam has had mixed opinions of the Artificer. He had a good one, he had a bad one. So there you go. But I have to say, I think that's brushes overall. They're using natural materials. And I think if you get a bad one, you take it back. Okay. I use Dolmio jars for water pots. Genius, Felhate. Thank you very much. Nice and low. And that was the other thing that I started to get annoyed about with... I like how I know how a high a Dolmeo jar is. Well, maybe, unless you're talking about the really big ones for making pasta meals. But yeah, it was the height of a mug as well. I don't know why. I just found out the more it holds, the less you clean it. This makes me be disciplined. Amit says, Acharya, as far as the chat's concerned. Do I make my own airbrush thinner, e.g. winner equal water plus matte acrylic? No, I do make my own Larmian medium for large washes and stuff like that with exactly that wash. A bit of ionized water, some matte acrylic and a little bit of flow aid. The reality is for thinners, my go-to thinner is X20, the Tamiya thinner. It works with most products. But saying that, more recently, I have been using things like drying retarder. The reality is because I use Minotaurs, most of those work directly out of the pot. I do use Vallejos. I've started to fall in love with some of the Vallejo colours, without a doubt. There's some great Vallejo colours, but I'm a relative Vallejo virgin. I'm still working out what does and doesn't work with Vallejo and changing my techniques. Minotaur's my go-to colour because it just works for me out the pot. And what I've tended to find is whenever I'm thinning Minotaurs, it's because I'm doing some really, really fine details, some highlights on the back of heels or something like that. And if I'm doing that, your worst bane is actually the paint drying on the point of the airbrush. So a drying retarder acts as both a thinner and keeps the paint wet. Now, admittedly, you've got to be disciplined because it means you can't just load up the paint, but you shouldn't be loading up the paint if you're doing a tiny highlight. Oh, Derpamus, do you want to go into a nightclub anymore? Since the smoking ban, they all smell of beer-fueled trouser trumpets. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I haven't been in a nightclub for so many years, mate. I can't imagine that you've not sold it to me with that description by any means. What else have we got? Sorry, the chat jumped. Doesn't isopropanol corrode organic brush bristles? Possibly. That's why you only use it for a few seconds to get the paint off, and then you immediately treat your brushes to some fresh water and a bit of paint soap, which again just conditions the brush bristles again. So yes, I think my point is it's a balance between it doing a little bit of damage to the bristles versus keeping brushes that, I've serviced about 8 brushes that, as far as I was concerned, were pretty much no good for anything other than dry brushes, and I'm now back to using them to paint points. So paint really fine details. So if I've gone from that to that, even if it gives me an extra 2 jobs out of those brushes before the bristles just fall out of the brush or whatever. By the way, I did leave one in to soak for ages that was ruined, and I thought, I wonder how far you can take this, and all the bristles just fell out of the brush. So that's why I say it's just in there for a few seconds. It's just, and exercise caution, start with less and then work up to more. I've heard of a new magazine called Warhammer Conquest subscription. You get painted brushes. Well, that's cool. I've heard about that, actually. They're doing a subscription service, which sounds awesome. Well, there you go. Ralph's covered it with a brush dope, and there's restoration agents in there, so there you go. Acharya says, when it comes to painting, Phil is the go-to guy for airbrush job. Sam is the go-to guy for... I'm not reading the rest of that. Behave yourself. Frost and Fist, hey bud, I've been in and out. Of course, my co-workers all have questions. Why Phil is talking? Oh, what? You know what? That's not fair. That's not fair. How can they keep interrupting you? Dave says, what's that primer again? The primer is Steinlerres. Steinlerres? I'm so sorry, Ralph. I'm just going to hold it up to the camera. There you go. It's made by Badger. Why they gave it such an impossible name to pronounce, I don't know. The important thing is it is polyurethane primer, but it's water-based, so it's just genius. It has all the self-leveling properties of aerosol, but you get all the beauty of control out of an airbrush. You do need a 0.3 minimum and ideally a 0.5 nozzle to use it well. Thank you, Amit, for providing the additional information. Right, DJ's a lucky one. Phil paid up my membership. Woohoo! Oh, thank you very much. I'm assuming you mean to premium, in which case, thank you very much, DJ, the lucky one. You're a star. It makes a massive difference to us, the support we get from Premium. And I noticed actually we had a couple of new subscribers today, which is always nice to see those new subscribers coming on board. Maybe one of them was you. I don't always recognise people because obviously I see the report that comes through gives me their real names rather than usernames. But hopefully one of those was you. In which case you put a smile on my face today. Ralph says I use Liquitex Airbrush Medium to thin paint. You're right. Ralph has talked about Liquitex Airbrush Medium. I do need to try that. I have to try that. But I have yet. Jet Set Jimbo is saying good night. So I'm going to say good night and hopefully I caught you. I'm running over a bit actually. Oh, have you painted your Magmadroth? If it's going to be grey, then yes. No. That's for the weekend. If anybody's seen what's going on, the Wargamer Online community, I've said the Magmadroth has to be painted this weekend. These guys have got to get up to a stage, which is the base coats, as you saw for the one I demonstrated there, base coats on everything other than the skin. The skin's been taken a bit further. If I can get those guys to that stage by the weekend, get the Magmadroth done to a similar stage, by the end of the weekend, I think I can kind of work on the bases. And simultaneously while bases are drying and stuff like that, because that always takes time with the texture paints and stuff. While they're drying, I can be doing things like washes and stuff on metallics and picking up highlights and stuff like that. Oh, DJ the Lucky One has just mentioned when I finished a couple of drops of needle juice from Badger. Absolutely right, and I can't believe I listed that as one of my essentials. So apologies, it's up there on my paint rank, but there you go. Needle juice is the law. 10,000 subscribers soon, says Acharya. Woohoo! Well, we're getting there, aren't we? We're getting there. I am looking forward to that. It feels like a milestone. Does it mean something? It doesn't really mean anything, really, does it? It's just more subscribers, which is brilliant anyway. So yesterday is better than the day before because we've got more subscribers. No, wait, yes. Today is better than that even because we've got more subscribers every day. But you're right. These little things, we should celebrate these milestones. We are planning a celebration for 10,000. So watch this space, particularly Premium members. You're going to be treated to some wonderful stuff. We've been talking to a bunch of people and we've got a whole bunch of people out there that are excited to sponsor some giveaways. So we're going to be giving away some stuff to YouTube, but the majority of it is going to go to our Premium members because the reality is the reason I'm sat here, the reason Sam can do what he does is because of the Premium members. So you appreciate that. It makes sense that that's where we focus on. Oh, right. Well, there was one last thing I wanted to show. We did the second bat report on last Wednesday, and I think it went much better than the first bat report. I was better at using the tech. You have to remember we'd literally only set the first battle report. I did tell everybody it's a bit of a test, and I was still learning it. I think the second one I was a bit better. I still missed a few key dice rolls because I was just... it's funny, you stop kind of doing the production side of it and you start just watching the game and having a giggle, and then you remember you've got a job to do, and I think that's one thing that happens. Is there an age restriction for Premium? No, not at all, but you do at this stage need a PayPal account, which I believe there's a restriction to PayPal account, but of course you can use somebody else's PayPal account providing you get their permission. Of course. So yes, there's no restriction. We are going to be introducing things like bank transfers and credit card payments and those kind of things, but that's going to be in a couple of months. Okay, so where was I? Right, yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the battle report. One of the comments we had from the first one was, can we see some music? Can we have some music just to kind of cover the quiet bits? Can we improve the audio? So what happened in the second one? Background music, I improved the camera angles, so we got some player cams in there and stuff I was pretty pleased with, and we put... a little bit more in terms of the microphone was improved, but still not there. I want to do some work with the microphones, but the problem is I need people to test it, which means I know it sounds daft, but I've got to ask some people to stand next to a gaming table and shout 1 2 1 2 and try and hold a conversation, and while I record and test audio and those kind of things. But I'm getting there, certainly. But the other point was can we have some close-up of the models? And I've been trying to rack my brain how to do that. One of the things I said on the YouTube channel was, on the live battle reports, I don't really want to burden the players with having to film the battle report, because as soon as you do that, they stop concentrating on their rules, they stop concentrating on their tactics, they stop concentrating on the game, and they start thinking about, did I capture that? You know, have I got that bit of footage? Am I holding the camera at the right angle? All of that stuff is going off in your head. So for any of you out there who watch battle reports and go, oh, I can't believe they forgot that or missed that. Well, you're doing two jobs when you film a battle report. You're playing the game and you're filming, and you need to practice both of them to be able to do both simultaneously. And it takes time. It takes time to bend your head around it. So if you invite a guest, to do a battle report and then ask them to wave a camera around, that in itself is just, you know, an impossible task, if you like. So we're working on what we could do on that. So I racked my brains on some ideas, and I've managed to get my hands on something that started off as speaking to a bunch of people saying, could I test one? And then in the end, they offered me such an incredible deal on it that I've actually bought it. Now, Coleman was on the chat earlier saying that it turns out Coleman has inadvertently, or unbeknownst to me, bought one of my battle tomes through eBay. I am selling pretty much everything that isn't nailed down in my hobby room at the moment to try and raise money for additional camera equipment, because I think this has worked so well. We'd like to expand this out to the main studio, maybe. I don't know. We've got to get together as a team and discuss it, but I think it's going to enable us to put out a lot more bat reports. But literally at 5 o'clock today, this thing arrived in a brown box with a little note in there saying, hope it works for you. If not, we'll give you your pennies back. So I set it up, and for those of you now, bear in mind the room isn't set up for gaming at the moment. There is well, actually, I tell a lie. There's a half-finished battle on the table at the moment. So ignore what's going off down that side, down the left-hand side. Ignore that. That's just a sheet that's hanging down at the moment. That's normally gone when we're filming a battle report. But that is what you would recognise as the isometric camera. What this little doohickey does is it will enable me to zoom in on different bits of the table. And the great news is I can control this manually. I can kind of, you know, zoom around and those kind of things, which is, you know, good fun. But also what I can do is, say if there's 3 or 4 battles taking place on the table, I can tell the camera to remember those positions. Now, the transition isn't brilliant, but that's okay, because I can cut away from this scene. So I could cut away to, say, the map camera while I do the transitions. So ignore the transitions at the moment. But for instance, this enables me to just quickly jump across to, say, the battle that's taking place on that side of the table. I can quickly jump across to, say, a unit that's advancing around a piece of scenery here. Or I can jump back over there, back to the battle between the 2 tree lords and a whole bunch of undeady dudes that Jack threw at me there. And then, if I want, I can just jump all of this back into the main isometric view. Now, like I said, I wouldn't be, you know, leaving that up. I'll cut away from it and then give it a second and cut back to it and then back to the isometric view. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm so excited about it. I'm contemplating trying to fit in a new live bat rep so we can try the tech out and see how it goes, basically. I'm going to cut back to this now, but I love this. I think it's I think we may have cracked it. Now, I've seen the Warhammer world set up, and this isn't anywhere near that level. So, you know, there are limitations with the tech and those kind of things. But the ability to, like I say, the idea to cut between sort of, you know, a battle taking place over here, and then you activate your unit in another battle over there, and we can kind of jump between them, I think is just awesome. And I think that's close enough to what you need to get. The camera is actually capable of going a little bit further, but I've noticed you start to lose quality. The other important thing to say as well is I have not set the camera up 100%. It arrived at 5 o'clock today. I dug it out of the box. I haven't even managed to show it anybody else at the moment. It was an experiment that turned into, when I spoke to the people, they said, look, we've got one that was returned to us. Whoa. Ro has just donated £50. That is brilliant. Thank you very much for some camera stuff. Thank you very much, man. That's brilliant. The reason it's really important to us is, as you know, we've wanted to increase the battle report. That's no good. We've wanted to increase the battle report output. Both myself and Sam have been racking our brains on how we could do that. Sam is focused on the painting tutorials and stuff, because the reality is the guy's a genius painter, and if we lose 15 hours of his time editing a battle report when he could be doing some amazing painting that just blows the socks off of everybody, it's just not a great use of his time. So we've been trying to find out how we can do that. So I think I maybe found a solution. We don't have to go live, although this technology can go live, and like I say, I'm tempted to do another live back rep just to see how it works. And plus, strange as it sounds, we're having a lot of fun with the live back reps. Whether the audience appreciates the live ones as much as the edited ones, I don't know. But where I'm at the moment is, I think we can use the same tech to record this stuff offline and then edit those. And ideally, if we could get to a stage where we're doing one battle report a week, 2 going on YouTube, 2 going on Premium. But I honestly think if we can get the other studio set up in a similar setup like this, we potentially could be looking at 1 a week on both Premium and the YouTube as well, which would just be insane if we could get to that stage. We need some help for that. We've got some help lined up, so that would be good news as well. The tech seems to be working now. Admittedly, I got a ridiculous bargain on that, less than 25% of its price. So they really offered me a fantastic deal, but they were intrigued to see whether it could be done as well. So it's always good to speak to people. And it's amazing how fantastically supporting people are out there. No, it's not a GoPro. You can't zoom GoPros, or at least I don't know that you can possibly digitally zoom a GoPro. This is an optical zoom, so it gives us an optical zoom, which makes a big difference. So that was the main thing, is to try and get that. The digital zoom would have been fairly straightforward, either inside OBS or something like that. But it's the optical zoom that makes the difference to the quality of the image that it goes through. Even said, this model is an old one and it's not the current one. I think if we could get one of the current models or something like that for the studio, it'd be amazing. But that's another story. Like I say, not a chance to show anyone, but I was so excited about it. I'd set it up and I was talking to Patrick about it. We were on the chat earlier to each other, and I was telling him I'm pretty excited about this because I think it enables us to do close-ups in game without asking the players to have to interrupt the gameplay. They can focus on what they're doing, which is just playing a game. And then I can focus on zooming in on detail, getting close to the action and those kind of things. So I think it's a great solution. I don't know whether I'm going to get a chance to do another live back rep. We might move some of them to Twitch, because I don't think it's also a brilliant idea that we absolutely spam our YouTube channel with loads and loads of live shows. I don't know. So maybe we start to move some of them to Twitch. It certainly opens up the possibility with the Zoom as well. Digital zoom would work really well if you got an 8K camera. Well, there you go. Yes. But we all know how cheap an 8K camera is. So yeah, there we go. That's what's going off on the hobby desk at the moment. There's a whole bunch of well, that's no good. That's no good either. There's a whole bunch of Fire Slayers. There's a ton of Fire Slayers going off at the moment. That's what the work's about. There's a battle report we're halfway through that will finish tomorrow night, and we'll get that edited up onto Premium certainly by the weekend. We're going to do another recorded back report Wednesday night this week. That won't be going live. That will be recorded, and it's probably aiming for Premium as well. But fear not, YouTube subscribers. We will be doing another live show. I think a week on Wednesday, and it will be as we get very close to the tournament. I think you'll be seeing a bunch of tournaments lists taking each other on to see how that goes. I'm half tempted to just do like a 5-hour show and set up for 2 games with maybe a break in between or something. Ralph says, please don't go to Twitch. The bandwidth is... Duncan was just donated £10. Thank you, Dunny Woods. You're a star. Thank you very much. Love the passion, the effort you guys go into, so here's something. Thank you. That's brilliant. That will all help out. And much appreciated, both Roa and Dunny today. That's brilliant. Thanks. A little bit blown away. Donations always blow me away a bit because it just enables us to do so much more with the channel. you know, we try and do as much as we can. Like I say, I'm selling bits and bobs off on YouTube, on eBay and stuff like that. I'm selling my beloved avatar of Kane and all that kind of stuff. But all I'm thinking is it's an avatar of Kane or a camera, and that camera gets us closer to doing a lot more battle reports. So that's what we're trying to get to at the moment. You'll notice that when you saw Sam's chattorial as well, we've done like a little camera over his palette so people can see the mixes he's doing and those kind of things. So it's the biggest cost for us. I think the reality is trying to get the studio equipment and stuff right. As you know, right from the start, we've always aimed high. You know, we've tried to aim as high as possible with our production values, really. So lots of people saying we prefer we stay on YouTube. I think the thing is, I'm not talking about exclusively going to Twitch. I'm just talking about some of the longer live shows. Twitch appears to be the platform for that. I could be wrong. And maybe it doesn't do any harm at all, but I don't know whether we get penalised in search by YouTube if you do too many long live shows. I don't know. We need to do some thinking about it. There is another audience out there in Twitch, and don't forget that everything we do is trying to get people to sign up to premium so we can do more. And if there's people out there on Twitch that never look at YouTube, it makes sense that maybe we do a bit of content for there as well. But who knows? I certainly know that the YouTube and Twitch audience rarely makes. The only thing I ever watch on Twitch, I have to say, is the Warhammer TV. That's what I watch on Twitch, and that's where they are. They're not on YouTube, but that's where I go. Please don't go to Twitch. Bandwidth is terrible. I can't watch anything live on Twitch. Sorry, Ralph. So, yeah, okay. I'm hearing you loud and clear. We're certainly going to keep doing stuff on YouTube as well. DJ the Lucky One. Phil, what is your eBay account so we can all have a bit of Phil? eBay account. Oh, eBay account. I think I'm down as Phil Moores. I think. I don't know, to be honest. Coleman found me because Coleman's bought one of my battle tomes off me. Which I feel really bad about. Coleman does so much for the channel. And it's just like, dude, you should have just emailed me. And I know I'm trying to raise money, but at the same time, I'd have just, I'd have posted that to you. But anyway, Coleman, that's another story. So I think Phil Mortz, if you might find me there anyway. But anyway, that's, I will, over the next few weeks, I've sorted out a list of stuff that I want to clear off. I'm keeping some aside for, oh, crikey, for giveaways for the channel and those kind of things. But, there you go. Right, look, I ran 20 minutes over. It's not often I run over. And considering the state of my back, I think maybe I should call it a day. I know that the delivery that arrived right at the start of this show, for those of you who saw me chuckling, I'm hoping that's my A-cases, which Olo from A-case managed to get a rush order out to me so I could transfer my Fire Slayers to the tournament. So I'm pretty excited about that. Got a couple for transport. I see the A-case for me, those smaller ones, more for tournament transport than storage, but I'm... Coleman was just looking for the battle tome and not me. I'm pretty Phil Mortz, there you go. Charia has said it. But guys, honestly, I appreciate what you're doing, but just it's cool. Don't worry about it. That's the donations and everything that everybody's doing. We'll get there. And when we do, there's going to be a lot more content from us, and that's what's all incredibly exciting. So I'm going to call it a night. I hope you've had a good time. I hope you enjoyed. I'm still showing my little Fire Slays. I hope you enjoyed the little sneak peek. Like I say, it might be a few days, possibly next Wednesday, before you see a battle report where we're using that. I still need to configure the tech. It seems to have some weird things going off in its head, so it doesn't work out the box, but I got it working. And like I say, the makers of it even said, well, you could give it a go, because it's certainly, I don't think, what it's meant to do, but I've managed to get it doing it that. So we'll see. Let's see on the next battle report, and I hope that all of you make it along and hit the chat with us as well, because it's always the chat that makes me chuckle and giggle as those games are going on. And maybe we can find two players who can actually roll dice next as well. And dice, that's another exciting bit of news that hopefully Sam can talk about on Saturday. Hopefully. Right, good night, Hall. I'm going to hit the end credits. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and we'll see you again soon. And thank you, one last thank you to Roa and Duncan Dunnywoods for the donations there, and also thank you to our premium subscribers. For those of you who have signed up and are supporting us, that's brilliant. And you know, like I say, that's the big thing, because it makes a big difference. But that's also a big thank you to everybody on YouTube who likes and subscribes and spreads the word and joins in on the chats, because the reality is even commenting on the chat makes a big difference, because it gives us stuff to talk about. And you know, really makes a massive difference to the channel when we've got great questions coming through and that are just relevant to everybody else as well. So I'm feeling good today. We'll see you again soon. Bye.